Hello and welcome to Scouting for Growth. Today I'm joined by Michael Doyle, a brand and capital raise guru who founded Brand Iron 20 years ago. Michael does something like me. He combines his branding and market making experience with his investment reporting analysis strengths to shape a company dedicated to creating congruent brands supported by strong financial and investment stories. With this approach, Michael helped companies he supported over the years raise over $5 billion of capital. When I asked Michael about branding, he shared, most people think of branding as how they present themselves and their company. I take branding beyond simply the message into something that produces tangible results by integrating branding into all areas of business. Think about sales, marketing, operation, finance. You can create a dynamic value proposition that comes alive, gets leads, and generates revenues. And I certainly believe in this because of my value creation background. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, do not forget to subscribe to it, rate it, and provide a comment here below. If there's a topic that you feel needs addressing, just send me a message using the channel options also listed below. With no further ado, let's welcome Michael. Hi, Michael. So good to have you today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm very curious to learn about all the great things you have done in this lifetime. I know you have an amazing experience. And, first of all, let's just start about who is Michael? What has Michael done for the past years? And your special story about your journey too, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. A little bit about myself, my background. I've got a company now called Brand Iron. We've been around 20 years. So we say we forge brands, we drive revenue. Really what that means is we work with companies to identify what's unique about their brand. How do we successfully package and communicate that? But then how do we put together and take them to market to drive real results and help them achieve their bigger picture outcomes, whether it be driving revenue, driving growth, expansion of a new product or service into the marketplace, or expanding into new geographies. We work with our clients to really work with them on achieving real world results is what most CEOs care about, and how do they get that return on their investment that they're really looking to get.
Wonderful. And that is a topic really important to my heart, actually, Michael. So, but before going into Brand Iron, I would love for you to tell us about your journey and your story and what got you to become a king of brand strategy and marketing.
Sure. I actually got to go back to my original. I first started out of college, worked for a small advertising agency, had a really great time doing that. Only worked there for about a year or two. Came up to work on one Friday morning and realized the doors were padlocked and the office was empty. And so I was there with the other employees looking at one another like, okay, I guess we're out of a job. And so it came to realize really fast that I had to do something. So that was on a Friday. I realized I wasn't getting my paycheck that Friday. So I made some calls, got a waiting job, and I started waiting tables the very next day because I had bills I had to pay. And then I was thinking about it over the weekend and say, you know what? I'm managing most of these clients. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to start my own ad agency. And that was in my mid-20s and had no idea what I was doing. And I figured it out. And back then it was, before the internet, and so I really had to learn and learn fast. And so I asked some people that I knew. I got a couple of mentors that I confided in that kind of helped consult me and coach me along the way. So I built that business up over a 10-year period of time and sold it as a part of an IPO .com roll-up. Thought I was done and retired, and it didn't quite work out that way. I spent 2 years working for this firm, and the day before my second anniversary, which they owed me a rather large check, they fired me for insubordinations because they knew they had to write me a check. And so they had bought 16 companies, and there was 4 of us that took more cash than stock. And that would mean that they had to pay us a real check with real money. And they didn't want to do that because the .com bust had already occurred. And most of the companies in that space, like our own, was not performing well, and they didn't want to pay us. So I spent the next 2 years of my life fighting a legal battle, and went through that whole experience. But I learned a ton by going through that whole experience.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it was. Go ahead.
What I was going to ask you, Michael, what have you learned? I mean, what have you learned from that experience? What would be the 3 lessons we need to remember? See, if those things happen to us, I mean, this is incredible.
Yeah. What I learned, the best part of what I learned about is probably the most applicable today is I, at the time, I didn't know it, but at the time I was putting together what we call analyst presentations, reporting on our company's performance to basically these investment banking firms on Wall Street. And it was an invaluable experience, having learned all that, learning how to put together pitch decks and these analyst presentations to support our company's stock. If it wasn't for those 2 years experience, I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I am today. It was a really rough time in my life, but that skill I picked up during those several years of doing it has been invaluable for the rest of my career. And so that's my big takeaway. I mean, I learned a lot more, but that's the big takeaway. And that has allowed me to really go into what we do at Brand now, where we help clients do a lot of capital raise decks. We do a lot of pitch decks, or what we concept decks. We help to put together what we call management presentations if a company wants to get acquired as well too. And so we really understand the formula of what goes into those. And I really understand not only the brand story, but the financial story around companies, and how do we successfully communicate and tell what those financial stories are. So if it wasn't for that experience, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I mean, it's hard. I could look at it and say it easily there, but back then it was not as easy to say that because it was rough back then.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. You know, today I had to write a quote for an event taking place in March, in next few weeks. And the interesting thing about the quote I had to write was about my learning, my lessons from my career to where I am today. And one thing I realized is, you know, you have so many bits of your career. You know, in my case, I've done strategy, I've done marketing, I've done business development, I've done evaluating business models. I've been able to evaluate operating model as well. And people said, you have done so many things. And then when you combine all those things, it becomes probably like a Michael. You actually have a path and say, I'm taking a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And that allows me to be able to do what I do today. Before going into Brand Iron, though, Michael, what is the biggest challenge companies have today from a branding, communication, and financial alignment viewpoint? Because you are combining all 3, right? The strategy, the operational environment, as well as the financial, to create a picture that allows investors to say, yes, I want a little bit of that.
Yep. You know, I call it like a holistic brand, and really understand what your holistic brand is. And that's not only it's not just about what I call logos and websites. Yes, your name, your logo, your website, your value proposition, your value points, your differentiators, those are all very important. But just as important is how you brand yourself internally within your corporation or within the culture within your company. How do you operate as a company? Are you living and making true that brand's coming alive and it's real? Are you delivering what we call within Brand Iron are you delivering great brand experiences, right? And so no matter what business you're in, it's not just to have a logo and a website, but you've got to have a good culture. You got to have the team that's going to deliver on those brand experiences and make those experiences come alive and really communicate and convey and make the claims that you make in your brand and on your website and in your sales materials. They have to come alive, and that they've got to come alive from within the organization itself. So how do you pull all these things together into one? Not only communicating the brand, what it wants to look like, how do you make sure you've got the systems and processes and people in place to be able to deliver on those? And then also, are all those things leading up to the desired financial outcomes that you're trying to achieve as far as your bigger picture business goals and objectives? So your brand has to be able to do all those things in order for it to be really successful.
So when you look at companies today, large or small, and I assume you work with a range of those different sizes, it would be great if you could give us some examples, but also what you see consistently across those companies that they are not doing right today.
Sure. So the first part of the question, we work with all three, I call them three categories of companies: startups that they're looking to establish their brand or develop that brand. And we're kind of helping them put that together. We work with what we call SMBs, or small, medium-sized businesses that are in the, let's say, 5 to 25 or $5 to $50 million in revenue. So we work with a bunch of those. And then we also work with large enterprise organizations as well too, that are very well established, do quite a bit of revenue, and so they all have their own unique challenges. And so part of what we try to do is figure out is how do we work with them and understand not just what we want to do, but also what do we want to evolve or grow into. And sometimes when we start with these brand value points and value propositions, sometimes they were what we call aspirational at the beginning, and they may not be there yet. So we've got to say, this is what we want to be. And then we have to kind of work and define that from a branding, messaging, and positioning standpoint. But then we also have to put together a parallel path of how are we going to deliver that on that brand promise? How are we going to make that become real, right? And then what is that, whether it be the processes or the people in place to be able to deliver on that brand value promise, to make sure that becomes alive and real, and we actually do what we say we're going to do. Like in the software world is a perfect example, right? It's vaporware, where they say this is what it wants to do, but then what they say it's going to do and what it actually does are two completely different things. And so we don't want our companies to be vaporware, if you will. And so we want them to be real. And if you're a real company that's, doing what it says it's going to do, you can produce some really great results.
And so when you look at the startups, the smallest company you work with, what would be a good fit for you for those organizations if they were going to call you?
For us, a lot of times, we work with a lot of startups where there's like help refine. We know what we want to do. Here's a really good example. I got a SaaS company that's developed a great product, but they don't know how to effectively communicate it. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's a small business ERP type of system. I can't say much more than that, but it's a SaaS ERP business, right? And he's like, I know what I want to do. I just don't know how to effectively communicate it because we do so much. And I said, we got to have, a couple of things that are core to what we do that communicate the differentiators, those value points that roll into a value proposition, but of a space we really can own. And we could claim that we really are better than anybody else in this particular space. So we work with startups all the time that need help on the branding, positioning, and messaging. We work with them all the time to be able to effectively communicate that and put it into a pitch deck or a capital raise deck to sell their concept, to raise capital. And they just they're there. And I would say that most of them are there and they have all the data and all the what it is they do. They just don't know how to refine it and put it into a nice, clear, and concise message.
Mm-hmm. So tell us what it takes to raise $5 billion of capital for clients, because I read the numbers, right? 5 billion of capital raise. You help over 40 companies to get acquired. and you have taken 20 public. So what does it take? What is the formula, Michael?
Formula is really understanding your niche, understanding how and why you're better. How do you and really communicate that and package it into a nice, clear, and concise message. Also, and that's kind of the brand story. The other one that most companies really have a very difficult time is telling a really sound financial story. And we're gonna go from A to B or A to Z, and we're gonna do that over X number of years or whatever that wants to be. We're gonna launch this product. We're gonna get so many subscribers or so many adopters, and each one of those is going to be X dollars per month, and we're going to have an ARR of X, and that's worth X, and it's going to allow our company to grow and have so much in revenue, and it's such an EBITDA. And if we grow at that rate with these type of parameters, it's going to give us an enterprise value of X. And being able to tell that story in a nice, clear, and concise fashion is what most companies have a really tough time. In fact, when I start out with most engagements on a cap raise deck, I get financials or spreadsheets, and they go, "What's in here?"
Go and check it out.
And it's my job is to extract that information and say, "Okay, I'm going to put it into a half dozen charts and talk about our growth rates, and I'm going to talk about our revenue and our EBITDA or profitability. I'm going to talk about the values and why this is so important, or the multiples that a company like this could usually expect, those types of things, and be able to package that and clearly communicate what that wants to be." So it's not only the brand story, it's effectively communicating the financial story, but then it's also going to be, can we communicate and highlight and showcase the team and their experience that's going to be able to effectively execute this plan and make investors feel comfortable that these guys really know what they're doing, and we feel confident that they're going to be able to deliver on this deck and make this become a reality.
Yeah. So let's talk about brand iron. And I went to the website, I looked at the process, and I think it would be super important and super relevant for you to give us a light deep dive around why you set up brand iron. I know we talked a little bit about it already, but I think it's very important for people to understand. You have the 3 segments, right? The small, the SME, the large enterprises, and you help them with branding, aligning finance, strategy, operation, and create a strong story for investors, for acquisition as well, for IPOs. And so when I went into the process you have on the website, it was very interesting because you have a very specific method. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, we start with what we call like a brainstorm planning session. And I always say you start with the end in mind. And so whether you're a startup, I don't care whether you're a startup or an SMB or a large enterprise, we start with the end in mind, saying we're going to do these activities or spend this money because we want to produce these results. And those results could be driving revenue, it could be growth, expansion, launching of a new product, launching a new subscription or a SaaS product or service. And so we start out with what are the end goals that we're trying to achieve. Here's a really good example. I've got an investment vehicle that we're working with right now. Mm-hmm. And it's a woman CEO like yourself. She's actually out of London, and she said, I want to achieve X results. And she's looking for us to help kind of put together the mathematical formula. I want to achieve X dollars in revenue. And in order to get that, work it backwards. And so we have to do the math work and say, well, in order to get so much in revenue, that means we've got to get so many people to make buying decisions. And to make those buying decisions, we have to drive so much traffic. We got to convert them from interested into buyers. Well, before that, so the top of the funnel is we got to reach, we've got to reach X number of people. We got to make so many impressions. We've got, after those impressions, we've got to make them so they're interested, click on an ad or click on a blog or a video. Yeah. And then we've got to get so much clicks to traffic and traffic to people to subscribe to make an investment. And so to get these goals, it's a mathematical formula. And so how do we go through that exercise and understand what is it going to take? And then what does our message need to be? And what are the most effective mediums? And what's the timing? And so we kind of have to put together all these different ingredients together into a secret sauce, if you will, of what's going to deliver the results we want to deliver. And it's a combination of not only a math problem, if you will, but there's the unique components of who is our ideal target customer, what appeals to them, what does the message need to be, what's the brand got to look like, what's the calls to action going to look like, what mediums are going to be most effective reaching those specific target audiences, what's that going to cost us, whether it be paid or organic, and kind of put that whole thing together into here is the recipe for success. And when you implement this, it never works perfectly. Nothing ever works perfectly. So the key is starting out with assumptions and then adjusting and optimizing and fine tuning it to where it gets to where it's producing your desired outcome and the results you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and partly with current market circumstances and uncertainty, we have to have a variety of assumptions and scenarios to make sure that one of them actually hit, as you said in sport or football, a run, right? You actually get to the outcome. One thing which you mentioned as you actually build those plans, it sounds like you're using a lot of technology as well to enable those companies, Michael. How important is technology? What's your view around the recent development in emerging technology? I don't know whether you have seen things around ChatGPT. I mean, are those things part of your proposition?
Yeah, I love technology. We resell a bunch of different marketing automation platforms, and it's kind of crazy the intelligence you can get on individuals or groups of individuals. And if you can be really specific about what your ideal customer profile looks like, you can be very specific about targeting them and what are the most effective ways to target them. So I am a huge proponent in utilizing a marketing automation or CRM system to help kind of power and backbone all of that. And the cool thing about that is it really does allow you to track the effectiveness of all the different mediums. Your website to all the different paid and organic, whether it be paid like a Google campaign or paid LinkedIn campaign or a paid social boosting. It allows you to track and measure the effectiveness of all these different mediums, effective of a campaign, effective of a specific vertical or specific ad, specific of, are you making money on your podcast, for instance, right? And so if you've got a technology platform that allows you the ability to track and measure the performance of all these different mediums, as well as all their different campaigns, as well as all the different messages and images, it's invaluable. And it really allows us the intelligence we need to be able to make wise decisions about spending valuable resources. It really makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do use a lot of automation and a lot of technology. And the most effective one for me is all the metrics you can get from those platforms, right? As Albert Einstein would say, if the strategy is not working, you should, change it in some ways. And so analytics allows you to see whether something is performing. And if it's not, it's time to move on. When you look at startups, SMEs, and the big companies you're working with, what would be the 3 tips, the takeaways you would could leave behind to those who are going to listen to this podcast around why they should give you a call or what they should investigate within their organization to see whether it's right?
Well, it's really funny you said this because we actually had a meeting this morning about our own brand and our own answers of why people call us. So we actually practice what we preach. We treat ourselves as a regular everyday client. And so it's really ironic that you asked that question today. One of them is, are the clients getting a return on the investment they want on their sales and marketing spend? Yeah. We get it all the time. I just picked up a client just this last week and say, we are working with a firm and they have no idea what what the results are on the amount of money we're spending. And we're looking for a partner that can really help us quantify that and track it and measure it and give us a really good idea of what's working, what's not working, and how do we really optimize that budget and kind of fine tune these campaigns to get us to our desired outcomes. That's one of the things. If you're a company that's looking to figure out how to brand and position yourself and communicate your message, we do a ton of that work. The other big thing we do is we do a lot of capital raise decks. We help people put together their brand stories. We help them put together their financial stories. And how do we effectively put that into a cap raise deck or a pitch presentation that really allows them to go out and raise the capital they need to be able to grow and achieve their goals and objectives. So I think those are a few things that what we really do and do it well.
What is the future? How the future is looking like for Brand Iron and for Michael?
You know, it's we have become laser focused on achieving our goals and objectives. We treat ourselves as a regular client, and so we make investments all the time about how do we get to our goals and objectives. And so we grew tremendously. I mean, we're like a lot of firms. I mean, we went through some tough times during COVID, and you know, actually we were positioned. We had a ton in the commercial real estate space, and a lot of our clients kind of took a nosedive. And so we've been recovering. This last year, we had a really strong, really good year. And then I'm super excited about way 2023 is going. And part of that is because we've really fine-tuned who we are, what we're all about, and who we're trying to work with. But then I've really kind of practiced what I preach as far as delivering the systems and processes and the team in place to deliver on those experiences. You know, like here's a really good example. This last week, we have a client that we've been working with for years, and we've really helped him optimize and really fine tune the return on his marketing investment. And he called me up the other day and said, I've got a referral for you. And then literally within 5 minutes, that referral calls me up and said, well, I was talking to so-and-so, and he said, I really need to be working with you. And I tell people that's the best way to get business is by producing great brand experiences. And I don't care what type of business you're in. If you deliver and deliver great experiences and you're able to make sure that becomes a reality, those people become raving fans and become your best advocates.
Absolutely. I've seen that as well. My approach is also very much testimonials, and even getting my client to get a call from potentially my new clients, because that's the best way to convince new people to work with you. What would be your last words of wisdom, Michael, looking at, you know, what we can do in this world? You know, my strengths are in fintech, insurance technology, fintech, insurtech, wealth tech, health tech. So this is my little pot, and it's where I focus my time. And, you know, there's still 100,000 startups in that little pot. I tend to work much more with early stage startups and help them identify the best way to enter a new market and to work with people like you. So what would be your last word of wisdom?
You know, let me give you a good example. My word for this morning, when I have a little quiet time every morning before I get up and get going to try to focus myself. And so my word of the day was like carpe diem, seize the day. And so I try to live every day to be the best I can be and make sure that Brand Iron's the best it could be, and the people I can build them up and help them be the best that they could be. And so, you know, my goal and what I'm trying to get accomplished is how do I be the best I can be from a holistic perspective on kind of giving back and serving my community, serving my coworkers, and how can I take advantage of each and every single day and live it to the fullest and make my dreams become a reality.
If we were going to see you on holiday, where would we find you?
We spend a lot of time. I grew up on the coast and down outside of San Diego, a little town called Carlsbad. I grew up there, and we love to go back to the beach, and we go there every summer. And so I spend a lot of time there in the summer times. And then my wife is from Arizona, so we go back home to Tucson quite a bit as well too, and enjoy the desert as well. So we kind of get the best of both worlds. But then I live in the mountains. I'm up in the mountains of Colorado, so I kind of have the best of everything. And so, yeah, that's where I spend a lot of time.
Lucky you. I have some friends who were in Colorado just last week, and they had a fabulous time. So where can we find you, Michael?
You can find me at brandiron.net. You also find me on LinkedIn at Michael Doyle. And that's the best way to find me.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for the time today. Thank you
so
for
much
giving
for
us.
having me.
My pleasure. It's an amazing story, and thank you for sharing as well your parcours. I think it will inspire our listeners as well, and hopefully bring some interesting client to Brand Iron.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
If you like this podcast, subscribe now, share with your friends, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a 5-star review. Also, if you want to cover any specific subject with me, contact me on Instagram under Sabine VdL Officials or LinkedIn under Sabine VdL. Thank you.